Okay, so good afternoon everyone. So, paano tayo conceptual framework Our third video for the conceptual framework in accounting standards. So we will proceed now sa aton nga kan. Okay, by the way, ang books ready na So to those nga mga nag-order, sa mga nag-order sang books, pwede niyo na makuha Okay. So we will start. So conceptual framework in accounting standards. Okay, so let's start with the very first PAS. Okay, we will start on the very first nga okay PAS, which is the PAS 1, okay, which is the presentation of financial statements. Okay, please take note nga ang PAS 1 is amo na siya ang nauna. Okay, do amo na siyang mga old nga mga standards, pero di ba may latest yan daw, which is the PFRS. Okay, wala siya gin supersede sang PFRS, but instead ang PFRS siya is gin-enhance niya lang ang mga existing nga mga standards. Okay? So may mga additional features siya ang PFRS nga to enhance okay, ang sa financial statement. Okay, pero ang PAS 1, which is ang first kid, is the presentation of the financial statements. So at the end of the lecture, you are expected to first, you can enumerate and describe the general features of financial statement presentation. So ini siya ang PAS 1, focus lang sa financial statements. Okay? Ito sa lima bala naton nga main nga financial statements. Okay? And enumerate and describe the components of a complete set of financial statements. So isa-isahon ta to siya. State the acceptable methods of presenting items of income and expenses, and differentiate between the statement of profit or loss and other comprehensive income and a statement of changes in equity. Okay? And state the relationship of the notes with the other components of complete set financial statements. Okay, so let's start from this. So what is the objective of the past one? Okay, so dapat kung example makuton ka mo later on sa inyong mga teachers sa accounting, dapat kung makuton ka mo what is the past one, ano ang past one nga namin sa standards. So dapat balaan nyo na automatic nga ang past one. Okay, ang title sang past one is presentation of financial statements. Okay, so PAS stands for Philippine Accounting Standards. Okay, PAS 1 prescribes the basis. Anong basis? Paano mag-present sang aton nga, take note of this, general purpose financial statements. So ang PAS 1 niya, ang coverage niya lang sana is ang general purpose financial statements. Kaya hindi isang specific. When we say general purpose, which is na-discuss na naman before, muna siya ang common nga financial statements na gina-prepare sa mga accountants. Okay, to improve the comparability, okay, with the entity's financial statements of previous periods, meaning previous years, 2018, 2019, or i-compare mo 2019 and 2020, and with the financial statements of other entities, okay, or other entities with the same industry. So what is a financial statement? Okay, let's define first what is a financial statement. So financial statements are the structured representation of an entity's financial position and results of the operations. Kaya muna siyang hambal sang PAS 1 nga definition sang aton nga financial statements. Okay? So financial statements are the end product of financial reporting or end products ng financial reporting process adtong aton nga accounting cycle bala. Diba? At the end of the accounting cycle, ang financial statements amo na sa aton nga end product o ang result. Okay, amo na siya ang aton nga summary sang results sang aton nga pag-obra sang financial statements. And the means by which the information gathered and processed is periodically communicated to users. So balan nyo naman kung ano ang different types of users. May primary kag may other users, no? So the financial statements of an entity pertains only to that entity, okay, and not to the industry where the entity belongs or the economy as a whole. So kung mag-ubra kita sang financial statements, kaya focus lang siya sa isa naton ka business or sa aton isa ka client. Okay, amo na yung financial statement isa sa every entity. Okay, especially sa mga businesses. So what is the general purpose financial statements? Okay, general purpose financial statements, liwat nun lang, are those intended to serve users who do not have the authority to demand financial reports tailored for their own needs. Okay? When you say of general purpose, sa mga common users, mabalaan mo na nga pagtulok mo pa lang, nga muna na siya ang ginatawag na general purpose financial statements. Ano? Okay, so general purpose financial statements cater to most of the common needs of a wide range of external users. Okay, so general purpose financial statements are the subject matter of the conceptual framework and the PFRS. Okay. So what are the complete set of financial statements? So lagpat yun na Number 1, statement of financial position. Or ang old term niya ang balance sheet. Okay, statement of profit or loss or income and expense. May man gahambal nga statement of income and expense, ano? So statement of profit or loss and other comprehensive income. Statement of changes in equity, cash flows, notes. Okay? So magin-add lang sila nga isa day which is an additional statement which is additional sa aton nga financial position, ano? So saan na siya ginagamitan? Only if when certain instances occur. So kung for example sina may mga changes kamo sa accounting policy, so ga-create ka mo sang do additional statement, ano. Pero ang original ya or ang primary nga set sang financial statement 5 lang. So what are the general features of the financial statement? So number 1, fair presentation and compliance with PFRS. Okay? So kung gaobra kita financial statement, okay, hindi na siya magiging acceptable, hindi na siya magiging correct, or hindi na siya magiging reliable if ang financial statement mo wala nag-comply sa PFRS. Okay, dapat amo ginang number 1 nga tawag dito nga requirement, okay? When preparing financial statement, kinahanglan nag-comply ikaw sa ginatawag nga standards. Okay? And kinahanglan ang pag-present mo is fair, hindi biased. Okay? So the application of PFRS with additional disclosure when necessary is presumed to result in financial statements that achieve a fair presentation. That's why kung mag-obra financial statements, ano, sa number 1 note ginahambala da nga ang financial statements is nag-comply or nag-base sa aton nga mga PFRS kag sa mga existing nga standards. So kinahanglan ang financial statement mo kuno is in a going concern manner. Okay? So an entity is not a going concern is as of the financial reporting. Okay? So the authorization of the financial statements for issue, management either intends to liquidate or ma-close sila. Okay, and has no realistic alternative but to do so. Okay, so the assessment of going concern is at least 12 months or 1 accounting cycle. So next is accrual basis of accounting. Ano, so balaan niyo naman ano ganing accrual. So we recognize income when earned regardless of when received, and we recognize expense when incurred regardless of when paid. Okay, so an entity shall prepare its financial statements except for cash flows information using the accrual basis of accounting. Okay? Kaya ang cash flow information ng atong statement of cash flows, naga-base lang sa cash transactions ng company. Okay? So the rest ng financial statement or compositions ng financial statement naka-accrual. So materiality and aggregation. So yun naman each material class of similar items must be presented separately in the financial statements. So offsetting. Asset and liabilities and income expense shall not be offset, okay, unless required or permitted by PFRS. So in general, bawal ang offsetting unless ginhambal sang standard nga pwede. So measuring assets, net of valuation of allowances, for example, obsolescence, okay, allowance, mga doubtful accounts, okay, are not offsetting. But gaano ka lang yan, nag-a-allot ikaw sang tawag dito, nag-a-allot ikaw sang account nga para ma-recognize, like for example accumulated depreciation, ano, so hindi man iniya is ano lang estimates, so hindi ga-account kita sina or gabutang kita sina account not to offset but to incur the necessary expenses for that certain assets. Okay, so frequency of reporting, an entity shall present a complete set of financial statement at least annually, pero may ara man companies nga naga-present sang financial statements semi-annually or every 6 months or mayroon man every 9 months. Okay? Pero ang common is at least ga-prepare ikaw financial statement annually or once a year or once in every accounting cycle. Okay? So when entity changes the end of its reporting period, for example, from calendar year, okay, then nag-change siya into fiscal year, bala yung calendar year, di ba? When we say of calendar year, nag-start sa January, ga-end sa December. While ang fiscal year, nag-start sa any month of the year, and nag-end siya 12 months after sang inang start sang ilang fiscal year. Okay, for the 1 year, an entity shall disclose the following. First, the period covered sang financial statements, the reason for using a longer or shorter period, and the fact that amounts presented in the financial statements are not entirely comparable. So comparative information. So entity shall present comparative information in respect to the preceding period for all amounts reported in the current period's financial statement. So, ano niya mo sila? Kung ga-prepare kita sa financial statement, especially sa atong client o sa business, okay? So always kita, okay, take note you nga always kina-prepare ang financial statement in a comparative way or in comparative manner, meaning 2018 and 2019. Kung for example, ka-prepare ka financial statement for the year 2019, kinanglan i-reflect mo man sa financial statement ang for the year 2018 para maging comparative siya. Okay? Consistency. Okay? An entity shall retain the presentation and classification of items in the financial statements from one period to another. Okay? When you say of consistency naman, for example, 2018 nagamit ka sang straight line method of depreciation, dapat pag-abot sa 2019 straight line. Okay? Dapat may na ka mag-present sang financial statements unless ang balasang standard ang past one, okay, it is apparent that another presentation or classification would be more appropriate. For example, ma-change ikaw for the next year, from straight line, ma-change ikaw for another method of computing the depreciation. So, pwede na siya unless ma-prove mo na ang pag-present mo sang ina or ang paggamit mo sina nga method, okay, will be more appropriate compared sa dati. And a significant change in the nature of entity's operation or review of its financial statements. Kumbaga, mas maga-enhance yung mga financial statements kung ma-change ikaw sang method na gamiton mo. And a PFRS requires a change in presentation. So, okay, katututo sa mo itong hambal ko kagi ng additional statement of financial position. Okay, gagamit lang kita sini. Okay, if number 1, applies an accounting policy retrospectively. Okay, may kita accounting policy again change for the year or for the next year nga kinahanglan naton i-apply retrospectively. When we say retrospectively, i-change naton ang previous, ang current, and ang future. So make a retrospective statement, reclassifies items in its financial statements. Okay, so the effect of the event in the statement of financial position as the beginning of the preceding period is material. Okay. So, ang ginamin sining additional statement of financial position, ito. Okay, kung ga-present ikaw sa additional statement of financial position, kinanglan, tatlo yung mo i-prepare. Ang current year, okay, ang preceding year, ang last year, kagang additional, which is ang change nga matabo sa aton nga financial position o sa aton nga balance sheet. Okay, so, wait lang. Okay. So, statement of financial position. Okay? So, a statement of financial position may be presented as either first, classified or unclassified. Okay? So, ano ang common de? Amo ne, ang classified. Okay? So, classified means showing distinctions between current and non-current. Okay? So, bala nyo man ang current, bala nyo man kung ano ang non-current. Diba? So, when you say unclassified, wala. Wala mo separate ang current sa non-current items. Pero, dapat mag-present kasi na ang pinakababaw is ang pinaka-liquid o ang pinaka readily convertible into cash or ang cash itself. Okay? So, past one also permits mixed presentation. So, now, ano nga sa financial position? Okay, let's define first what is a current assets. Okay, a current assets are assets that are expects to realize the asset or intends to sell or consume within the normal operating cycle, which is normally 1 year. Ano? Next, it holds the asset primarily for the purpose of trading. It expects to realize the asset within 12 months. Okay, the asset is cash or a cash equivalent unless the asset is restricted from being exchanged or used to settle a liability for at least 12 months after the reporting period. So kung wala siya sini sa classification, more or less, non-current assets na siya. Okay? So next, what is a current liabilities? Ano? So the same, almost the same lang mana ang ilang definition. Okay? So our liabilities that are, first, it expects to settle the liability in a normal operating cycle, which is normally 1 year. It holds the liability primarily for the purpose of trading. Okay? The liability is due to be settled within 12 months. Okay? And the entity does not have an unconditional right to defer settlement of the liability for at least 12-month periods after the reporting period. So, kapag wala man siya sa definition, more or less, non-current liability na siya. Okay? Or in a shorter terms, when we say of current assets, okay, focus ka lang sa sa kung magamit mo siya or ang iya nga life is within a year lang or within a normal operating cycle, current. Kapag more than a year or more than one accounting cycle, classify mo siya as non-current. Okay, no need nga lagpaton yun eh. Okay, when we say current, mga within 1 year. Okay, kapag more than 1 year gani, automatic non-current assets. Okay? Now, what do you mean when you say currently maturing long-term liabilities? Okay, ano siniyabot silingon? So, amo ni siya inang mga long-term liabilities, mga loans, loan payables. Okay, nga usually 5 years or 3 years before mag-due. Pero, okay, mag-due na siya within a year. Ano, kung ano silingon? For example, the entity's current reporting date is December 31, 2019. Okay? A bank loan taken 10 years ago, meaning ginkuha ta siya sang 2010, 2009, I mean, 2010. Ma-mature sa kuno October 31, 2020, which is next year na. Okay, which is next year na, di ba? So, currently maturing long-term liabilities are presented as current liabilities. So, from non-current, okay, from non-current liabilities, ibutang mo na siya ngayon sa aton nga current. Okay? Kaya bank loan taken 10 years ago, meaning 2010, nagawa kita loan. Kaya yan gonna report na nga date or gobra kita financial statements ending December 31, 2019. Ang bank loan, ma-due next year. Okay? Ma-mature siya within a year, tama? So, from December 31 to October 31, 10 months lang ma-mature na siya. So, ini nga liability, ining bank loan nga na bakal mo or nakuha mo sang October 31, 2010, i-reclassify mo na siya ngayon as a current liability. Okay? Except for, like for example, ini nga bank loan, may kita ginatawag nga refinancing agreement. Anong refinancing agreement naman? For example, hindi mo pa ni fully paid nga bank loan and wala ikaw kwarta na pambayad. Okay? So, refinancing agreement that is fully completed on or before the balance sheet date or on or before December 31, 2019, yan namin, i-considered mo siya Japon as non-current liability nga man. Kaya i-refinance mo siya. Hindi na siya mag-due sa October 31, but mag-due na siya, for example, after 2 years naman or after 3 years. Depende sa imong nga refinancing agreement. Okay? Nang natawag pala nga extended nga maturity date. Okay? While the refinancing agreement after the balance sheet date, which is December 31, but before the financial statements are authorized for issue, okay, which is the non-current liability if the entity expects and has the discretion, take note of this term, to refinance it on a long-term basis under an existing loan facility. I-considered mo siya as non-current liability. Okay? Balik ka dyan eh. Okay? Pero if ang imo refinancing agreement, okay, na complete na siya, okay, after the balance sheet date, Okay, after the balance sheet date, kag after man sang financial statements are authorized for issue. Okay? So, i-consider mo siya Japon as a current liability or ma-mature siya within a current term. So, breach of a loan agreement. So, what is a breach of loan agreement? So, it is an event where one party on the loan contract does not fulfill, usually si debtor ang nag-utang, okay? Does not fulfill any of the provisions within the scope of their agreement. Okay? When breach of contract or agreement occurred, it is considered as payable on demand. For example, nag-loan ako. Kaya the year 2020. Ma-loan ako which will mature after 10 years. So, 2030 pa siya. Okay? Now, part sa amon agreement is that hambal sang ang akon ginutangan kaya ang creditor hambal niya as long nga may utang ka sa akon part sa ato niya contract hindi ka pwede ka loan sa iban. Okay? If gin-breach ko na, when we say of breach, wala ko na gin-follow nga provision within that contract, okay? Although 10 years amon hambalanay nga mabayad ako within 10 years, kay nag-breach ako sa contract, automatic payable on demand siya. Considered mo siya as current. Okay? Pwede niya kuya masukot insigida. Itungod nag-breach ako sang loan agreement. Okay, a liability that is payable on demand is a current liability. Pero may exceptions naman. It is presented as non-current if ang creditor, okay, provides the entity on or before the balance sheet date a grace period ending at least 12 months after the balance sheet date to rectify a breach of loan covenant. For example, naluoy siya sa ako, nambal niya, sige, palampason ko na lang na. So, i-continue ko na lang or bayarin na lang ko after 2 years. Kaysa 10 years, imuon ko na lang 2 years. So, considered mo man Japon as non-current. Okay? So, minimum line items in the statement of financial position. So, ari ni siya sa book, okay? Which is ari niya sa PAS. Okay? So, kinanglan, familiarize yun in yourself. Okay, kung usually ka pamangkot ng board exam, okay? For example, sa multiple choice, mahambal siya. Okay? Between the choices, sa diin diri ang wala na include or ma-exclude sa minimum line items sa statement of financial position. So kung di mo nabalaan, of course, di mo ito masabtan. Pero kung familiarize mo yourself, kung anong ari di, okay? So, basta ko ang chance niya, makuha mo siya. Okay? Pero most of this is i-discuss na ni later. Okay? Continuation mo lang So, order, format of presentation. Okay? Pass 1 does not prescribe the order or format in which an entity presents items. Or, butslingon niya, wala ko nagahambal ang standard kung paano ka mag-ubra financial statement o paano pagpasunod niya. But, sa Philippines, kapag present ikaw sang financial statement, always kagid ya mauna sa aton nga current after sang non-current. Okay? So let's proceed. Statement of profit or loss and other comprehensive income. Okay, so let's proceed. Statement of profit or loss. Nang kay may nagkuha sang book. Okay. Kailangan ako i-pause video, but okay lang. Okay. So statement of profit or loss and other comprehensive income. So an entity kagina financial aqua natin gipresenta ang klase financial position. Now, let's proceed sa aton nga income statement or statement of profit or loss and other comprehensive income. Okay? So an entity shall present all items of income and expenses recognized in a period, okay? First, in a single statement or duwa ka statement. Okay? When we say single statement, ang statement of profit or loss and other comprehensive income isa lang ka statement. Pero pwede mo man siya kuno i-present into two. Okay? First, statement of profit or loss. Okay? Statement displaying the profit or loss section only. Okay? And a second statement beginning with the profit or loss and displaying components of other comprehensive income. So, Ang other comprehensive income, okay, may listahan ni di kung ano lang di ang pwede masulod sa other comprehensive income. Okay, so later, present ko dahil eh. Extraordinary items, okay? Class 1 prohibits the presentation of any items of income or expense as extraordinary items in the statement, okay? So, anong extraordinary items? Amo ni sila ang mga events, okay? Na mga hindi siya sang reoccurring, kumbaga kaisa lang or very minimal lang ang occurrence niya. For example, sino ng mga floods, typhoons, okay? Mga disasters, okay? Sa una, ginapresente na, pwede na siya as magamit as extraordinary items. But yan bawal, wala na. Okay? So, extraordinary items are companies' gains or losses from events that were unusual and infrequent in nature. Okay? So, ano siya? Okay? Ang other comprehensive income, amo ni ang pwede naton mabutang dire. Wala na iban. Okay? Which is may another chapter for this. So, yan i-overview ko lang. Okay? Changes in revaluation surplus, unrealized gains and losses on investment, okay? Which is categorized as fair value through OCI, okay? Fair value through other comprehensive income. Mabalaan yun later on sa investment ka topic. Okay? Remeasurement gains or the net defined benefit liability or asset. Gains or losses arising from translating the financial statements. Ini siya sa advanced accounting, mabalaan yun So effective portion of gains and losses on hedging, okay, hedging instruments in a cash flow hedge, advanced accounting man So OCI may be presented either net of tax or gross of tax. Okay, so reclassification adjustments. Okay, ini siya magamit na lang ni siya dito sa other comprehensive income nga statement ano. So reclassification adjustments are amounts reclassified to profit or loss in the current period that were recognized in other comprehensive income in the current or previous periods. Ako nang silingon sini, gina-recycle mo siya. Okay? Gina-recycle sa profit or loss. Okay? Amounts that cannot be reclassified or recycled in the profit or loss will go directly to retained earnings. Okay? So ano ang mga items dito sa inahatag ko na pwede na itong ma-reclassify. When we say of reclassify, the moment nga mag-gain mo na siya, the moment nga ma-realized gain mo na siya, okay, pwede mo siya mabutang dito sa profit or loss. Pag hindi mo siya mabutang sa profit or loss, butang mo siya sa retained earnings. Okay, amo ni sila. Okay. So, overview pa man lang. Okay, later sa mas mag-go deeper pa na kung mabalaan nyo na kung ano ang mga investments. So, total comprehensive income means, okay, total sang profit or loss kag other comprehensive income. Okay? So, presentation of expense, duha. Okay? Abot ko na klase yun before sa inyong basic accounting. But when present of expense, duha man na klase. It's either nature of expense method or based sa function sang expense. When we say of nature, magbutang ka sang expense is based sa nature nila. Kaya ginakumpul-kumpul mo or ginagroup mo ang mga expenses based sa nature sang ilang or based sa nature sila nga expense. Like this, Okay? While sa function, okay, amo na siyang common nga ginagamit, okay, which is gumpisa sa revenue, then cost of sales, okay, then distribution cost, administrative, okay. Pero ang iban, pwede nga ginamix-mix na nila. Okay? If an entity classifies expenses by function, kung ano ni gamiton mo, it shall disclose additional information on the nature of expenses. If nature of expense method mo gamiton, no need to disclose ang function sang mga expenses. Okay, so notes, kato sa notes, Ang balko, ang notes is supplementary financial statements or supplementary parts ng financial statement nga kung hindi mo siya mabutang dito sa apat ka other statement, ibutang mo siya sa notes. Okay? So, when we present notes or magamit ikaw sang notes, so mo pisa ka sa statement of compliance mo tong hamal ko kagina. Ang imo financial statement nag-comply sa PFRS. Number 2, summary of significant accounting policies. Ano ang mga accounting policies na gamit mo? Number 3 na part, okay, ang mga computations. Okay, mga computations ang aton nga cash and cash equivalents, anong mga composition niya. And lastly is ang other disclosures. Okay? And that would be all. Ano? So if anything, may question, PM lang. Okay?